I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I have a confession to make. I, too, am a seeker, but my dreams aren't like yours. I can't help thinking that somewhere in the universe, there has to be something better than man. Has to be.
Just has to be.
I am Phil Svitek, joined alongside Demetri Panos.
Hello, movie fans. How are you?
And today, we're not dissecting just one movie. We're going to dissect, we'll say 6. This is the Planet of the Apes special. We will discuss every movie. We'll discuss the Tim Burton one briefly, but we'll call the original 5 and the reboot as the 6 of the focus.
Yeah, that's probably best. Probably best.
Let's start with this. Demetri, how did you, this has been such a long-standing franchise. Obviously, we're doing this in anticipation of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Can't wait to see.
Which we will be dissecting next Friday. But how did you get introduced to the planet?
I was brought to the Planet of the Apes. Well, I mean, when the movie came out in 1968, and I was a wee toddler then, so I wasn't going to the movies quite just yet. So to me, Planet of the Apes was introduced to me on TV. And back at the time when a movie was, especially in the 70s, when a movie was broadcast on TV, it was actually a big deal. So, but I saw it on, coming from Boston, the Movie Loft with Dana Hersey or one of those UHF channels. I was just starting to, recognize Charlton Heston as an actor, because at that point, he was in movies like Airport 75, The Omega Man, which was another, The Omega Man, and I consider Planet of the Apes sort of kind of like his start of his science fiction trilogy. I mean, he was in 3 great science fiction movies: this, Omega Man, Soylent Green, and then he went off. He did Earthquake, which I remember him from that. Airport 75. So it was around that time when I started to recognize who Charlton Heston was. And so I saw the movies on TV because they were broadcast on TV at various times. I don't think I ever saw them until much later on in years. I don't ever think I saw the movies chronologically, meaning I never saw Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from Planet of the Apes, Conquest for the Planet of the Apes, and then Battle for the Planet of the Apes. I never saw them in that order. But I did see them, and then again, as the movies sort of petered out, they came to TV. So as a kid, it was an hour long. Science fiction was sort of kind of popular. I mean, I was already watching Star Trek, a syndicated show, an hour long. Planet of the Apes comes along, and I was familiar with it. It was an hour long, but it was going up at the time against heavy hitters like a Sanford and Son. It lasted a season. But yet the show was popular enough that merchandising hit, and there were lunch boxes for Planet of the Apes. There were dolls for Planet of the Apes. Trading cards. There were trading cards for the Planet of the Apes show. And then a cartoon came along for Saturday morning. So, all these movies, what they ended up spawning is sort of kind of incredible because, it was never like a Star Trek, which really took off in its syndication. It was always there, but for kids, especially growing up, Planet of the Apes was a big thing. So yeah, it was definitely for me. I caught on in the 70s, and it wasn't until later when DVD was born. I have a box set that has all of them, together, and it's really funny. I was popping a couple of them in, and again, I talked DVD, and they weren't formatted for the widescreen TVs. So yeah, I mean, it's just really, to me, it's just funny how the longevity this franchise has had throughout its years. And there's been good and there's been not so good, but
I think
how about you?
I mean, to me, I came through it because of Charlton Heston, and everyone kind of raves about that movie and just how iconic it is. And so I saw it. I'd seen them very early on, and certainly out of sequence.
Sure.
But kind of looking back on it now, I applaud the brilliance of it. Yes, there's certain hit or miss aspects of the actual execution of the movies themselves over the course of the 5. But the idea to me, as I did more and more research, was always there, and that I appreciate the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And had TV been as big as it was, and you could put it on, let's say, an AMC or FX, you could really go that sort of journey with all of this. But I think perhaps it was a little bit ahead of its time too. Whereas now, where Rise of the Planet of the Apes, came out, and when I saw that, I was at the right age where I could appreciate it, and I think a lot of people did. There's something. Obviously, there was something for everybody, both from a thinking capacity, but also from an action capacity.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And to your point, I think like the original Planet of the Apes, the first time as a kid, and I'm talking, I had to have been 5, 6, 7, 8. Within those years, I wasn't thinking of the pure science fiction philosophical elements that the movie was bringing to the table. It was much the same way that I was watching Star Trek at the time. Cool show. I mean, Planet of the Apes, you got the great costumes, you got monkeys talking, you got Charlton Heston, you have all this stuff going on, and that's what fascinated me as a kid. Same, with Star Trek, you had spaceships, phasers, all that stuff. It wasn't until I got older and, I had a little bit more life experience in me and some schooling and whatnot, that when you rewatch Planet of the Apes, the original one, and some of the other ones after, subsequent ones, you realize the social message that number one, the social message that to me is very intrinsic in very good science fiction. And Planet of the Apes, in some circles, is considered to be the best science fiction movie on the planet because of its themes. And it literally does.
To me, I like the idea of evolution and extinction, but for most people, it seems to be more about race and things of that nature, and there's a lot of debate, and I know we were talking offhand about how people think this movie is just completely racist to begin with. Yeah,
and I just think, I'd read an article yesterday about that, and, he said he grew up watching it as a kid as well, and he just recently rewatched it, and basically, the author of the article said that Planet of the Apes is extremely racist and, treats women really poorly and everything. And I was like, wow, how does he come up with this? And he broke it down by class of the apes. And it was a very interesting theory, or a thesis. I don't necessarily agree, but I saw where this person was going with it, and I'll find the article, I'll post it. But I didn't find it racist. I found it to be, look, good science fiction should be, you're looking at humanity through a looking glass. And what Planet of the Apes does great is it flips, we as humans look at, it flips the tables on us. Mm-hmm. And our pets or animals, and it's the treatment that we as humans may have given to another species, race, or whatnot, and how it turns those tables so that we look at things in a different light. That, to me, is part of the brilliance of the original Planet of the Apes, and even Conquest, for that matter. Well, again, and that's why I applaud, if you really look at, the series as a whole, to me, it comes back full circle because, the whole point is, you start with the apes enslaving. Mm-hmm. But then you go to a point where all of a sudden now the humans are enslaving apes, and then you go back to that rebellion, and then the only solution is a peace. Yeah. There's a way to do this, and I think that's the ultimate message. If you look at the 5 as the 5, but if you look at the individual movies, then perhaps I could see that. But there was always that notion of like, this isn't right. There's something off. Absolutely. And again, great science fiction shows that. Science fiction can show you things in a way that it's like a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine goes down. All right, so we have a fantastic movie like 12 Years a Slave. Okay, the movie is brutal. It's it's hard to it at times is hard to sit through. I think that we would all agree, for those who've seen it, it's a fantastic movie, but it's very brutal. A movie like A Planet of the Apes can take, okay, I'm going to take a science fiction, and Star Trek did this very well as well. You could take a concept such as slavery and racism, and you can sort of kind of turn it around, and you make it. It's a thinking man's movie, and it makes it so that it makes people go, huh, wow, that's fascinating. Wow, okay, I get that message. And you hope that you can come out of it, and for someone who's intelligent that's not going to look at it for just an action movie, they can come out of that and say, wow, look at the racism, the slavery, this is about slavery, but it doesn't portray the brutality of it. But a good science fiction should make you, in a sense, be introspective. So that's why, like, I think the Planet of the Apes, it is a great turn the tables on humanity. See how humanity has been stupid, so to speak. And, I think there's a reason why Charlton Heston doesn't speak through a good chunk of Planet of the Apes, aside from the fact that he was very, very sick while filming it. But it's not until later when he talks, because at that point humans have become sort of kind of dumbified. They've been lobotomized, and when he speaks, that's a big deal to the apes. Much like when we find out that there are talking apes, that's a big deal to humanity. So it's a great mirror. Mirror to put up.
Absolutely. What would you say, let's take it back, and we'll take it a little bit lighter, and then we'll go into the more deeper subjects.
Sure.
But, for you, what was the, I think for most people, Beneath the Planet of the Apes was the one that kind of was in the series, not the best one.
For me, it was more Battle of the last movie that came out. It's just, it's really weird too, because you figure you have Planet of the Apes, which was a hit. It did $34 million, which back in 1968. That's
the
huge.
budget, no budget went over $6 million of the originals.
Yeah, so when you look at what it did in 1968, you figure, like, the thought process is, let's take some money and let's make a bigger movie. Let's make it look a little better. But they almost seem to go in reverse. Well, they seem to cut the budgets.
They did, and ironically, my first movie that I remember seeing that with was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But the first one was 5.4. Then we went down to 3. Then we went down to 2.5. Then we went to 1.8, and then we ended up at 1.7.
Right, and by the time you get to Battle, it's just evident. It's like watching the 3rd season of Star Trek. It's just evident that the money's not there. They don't care. To me, that was the silliest. Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the concept was there. It just got so heady, so freaky. Like, there was an underground... there's an underground of humanity who have become... through the apocalypse, through the nuclear, they become telepathic, and they can put thoughts in people's minds and hallucinations, and it just became very heady. And Charlton Heston was in the sequel for about maybe a whole of 10-15 minutes. It was James Franciscus, I believe.
But was it doomed from the start because he didn't necessarily want to even do a sequel, and then certainly didn't want to do a sequel to a sequel?
Well, Beneath is very interesting. We were talking about this. The movie, Richard Zanuck was one of the producers of Planet of the, he was the head of Fox, who was going to release the movie, and he didn't want to do the original Planet of the Apes. He didn't want to release it, but thankfully, luckily, there was a small little movie, another science fiction movie called The Fantastic Voyage that had come out, and that convinced him that there is an audience for science fiction movies. So, to his good judgment, and thank you, Fantastic Voyage, because if Fantastic Voyage didn't happen, we may not have had Planet of the Apes, period. Fox gives the green light to do Planet of the Apes. So doing $32 million, that's a big deal. So they were going to go ahead and make a sequel. At the time, Rod Serling, who had a hand in writing the original Planet of the Apes, they felt that his vision of Planet of the Apes was going to be too costly. So they more or less scrapped it, and they gave it to another gentleman, Michael, can't think of his last name right now. Not Michael Wilson.
Let's see, I'll pull it up.
I just can't find it right now. I apologize. It's, I don't know why it was like Michael...
Michael Wilson.
It was Michael Wilson. Okay.
But then Michael Wilson was on the first one, and then credited is Paul Den for the
second one. But what's interesting is that they went back to Rod Serling, and even the author of the book himself, Pierre Boulet, and they submitted screenplays for the sequel, and they just discarded them. And Paul Den, who had written, he was a co-writer of Goldfinger for James Bond. They brought him on board and to do Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Well, as production was beginning, Zanuck is let go from Fox, and as a sort of kind of like an FU, he sort of kind of, before he leaves, he basically says, "Hey, I'm going to take, I brought this potential franchise in. It was, all right, I'm going to suggest that the new director, Ted Post, come in, and we're going to end the movie with the planet blowing up and Heston being killed off and whatever." Heston, at that point, was more than happy to oblige. He didn't want to be dragged back for a third. And hence, you get this really nihilistic ending for Beneath. I mean, literally, Heston presses the button and blows up the planet. And you don't think at that point, how are we going to get out? How are we going to write ourselves into a third? But they did they did what Hollywood does best. They
wiped it away.
It's unbeknownst to our audience. Cornelius and Zira are off, and they find Taylor's ship, and they blast off into space just as the planet is going to explode. But wait, a shockwave sends them back to present-day Earth. And hence we get Escape from the Planet of the Apes. So it's just, to me, again, you can only really do this in science fiction and or fantasy. It's just great how that little timeline and perpetuates a story. And it's in Escape that we get a little bit more of what happened to humanity. Because up to that point, we did believe that it was humanity that ruined Earth through nuclear war, and they're the ones who blasted it. But then we get the first glimpse of a virus that was let loose on Earth, which wipes out all cats and dogs. Cats and dogs only. So no fish, no cows, no monkeys, no tiger. I wonder if it affected tigers. No elephants. All other cats and dogs specifically. All are what we have as pets. Or eradicated from the Earth. And I do find it interesting that with the new reboot, that it is actually Escape from the Planet of the Apes and Conquest that are the sort of kind of blueprints to rise in this new movie that just comes out, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
I think,
smart.
No, it is smart. And, obviously Escape did way better. Escape got a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes versus Conquest, which was 44%. Beneath was 41. But my suggestion to any wannabe filmmaker, just take a good concept from a bad movie and just make a good movie. Dude, that's it. There's your success.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I've been saying, if you're going to remake a movie, don't remake a good movie. Go back to an old B movie or a movie that wasn't that great and remake it and make it better. Because it's a movie that not a lot of people saw.
Yeah.
And you're going to take this concept, you'll redo it and make a good movie out of it. There's so much to farm from, or mine from, and I couldn't agree with you more. Personally, I do think that Conquest, to me, Conquest is my second favorite. And I just recently watched Conquest as well, and the messages that one have, maybe not as profound as the original. None of the movies, to me, reach up to what the original Planet of the Apes, movie.
I think everyone agrees.
Right? But Conquest, probably to me anyways, had the most profound, it was the one that said, it was where Caesar came into control. It's where Caesar sees the brutality of humanity And Caesar also learns that the apes can actually sort of kind of go down the same path. He's not going to let humanity get away, but if they continue to be brutal, they'll go the same path as humanity. And there is race mentioning conquest as well. And you had a good, Roddy McDowall. Roddy McDowall is the through line through these movies. And nobody's going to, to me, my first experience with Roddy McDowall was he was Acres in the Poseidon Adventure. And then, you see him in Planet of the Apes underneath all that makeup. And, yeah, I mean, I don't think he's given enough credit. The performance that he was able to get through, whether it be from his eyes and or his expressions under that heavy makeup, I mean, he was really a great actor.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because so much in the new one is given to, so much praise given to Andy Serkis. He's now the king of motion capture.
Yeah.
But as we were talking, obviously in these at least, they were real people. And it was all makeup, and in fact, it deterred a lot of actors from doing these parts, given that makeup. Yeah,
it's really funny. We should talk about that because I think it's very important that in the process, as they're trying to sell the movie, nobody was buying the concept that you can make apes look realistic back in 1967 or 68 as they're trying to get this project off the ground. Charlton Heston incorporates, I believe it was his good friend, Edward G. Robinson. He gets him and Charlton Heston, that they went into full ape costume and makeup mode to sell the movie. And that is what, too, also got Zanuck's attention, that, okay, this can be done realistically. And Edward G. Robinson was slated to be in the movie, but he said, no, because I'm not going through that makeup process again. Nope. I thank you very much. I appreciate it. Good luck to you. So the other sad thing is, too, back in that time, there was no Academy Award for makeup and costuming, hair and makeup and things like that. So it never really got recognized outside of reviews and outside of audiences saying, oh my God, that's incredible. Look, it's amazing. And back in 1968, it truly was. I mean, because they were fully functional, it wasn't puppeteering. They had to act. And then it became such pop culture that it almost became mainstay in the late 60s, early 70s. They were showing up on Sonny and Cher, the apes, so... And then today we do have motion capture, and people call Andy Serkis the king of motion capture. Well, he more or less invented motion capture. I mean, with Gollum, and then he was King Kong, and all the other things that he did. Very talented, physical man, which I'll never take anything away from. I just don't know if we understand what motion capture is. And that it captures your motion literally, and your emotion and such. But I think the Academy will always shy away from say, giving Andy Serkis a best actor or best supporting actor nod, because maybe somewhere in the back of people's minds they'll say, well, how do I know special effects? I know that's him under that, but how do I know they didn't touch it up with special effects to make his eyebrow go up or whatever? I don't think it's necessarily a fair assessment. Because
here's the thing, truthfully, the same can be. An editor touches up so many actors' performances. Trust me,
absolutely. So Andy Serkis, yes, right now he's being credited as the man of motion capture, but who else is doing it? I mean, he's the one.
And I wanted to bring that up only because, yes, I applaud him, and I love the new, again, we're not going to talk about Tim Burton's, but Rise of the Planet of the Apes, to me, was absolutely fantastic, amazing, and I think, it finally, for me, hit a time, it's been waiting so long to finally find the right time, the right audience, and I think now it has. Now is the peak of Planet of the Apes, but there's something for me about it just being realistic.
Yeah.
Whereas, again, they made it so realistic and so fun in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but, just putting people in costumes to me, that's still the ultimate.
Yeah, and it's
Just like even The
school.
Hobbit and The Lord of
Yep.
the Rings, they still go to that level, and it looks fun.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, it comes down to the performance and to the actor. And when you look at what Kim Hunter and Roddy McDowall brought to the table, even in the television show, you had the great Mark Leonard, who went on to Star Trek fame as Spock's dad, but he was dressed up as the general. And when you look at the performances that people can do under that type of heavy makeup, and you look at Roddy McDowall's performance, and even Kim Hunter, they do bring a sympathy, a heart. They can be fearful, they can be concerned, they can be angry, and you get all of that. It's not lost in the makeup. Their acting ability comes through, and right now I'm giving them all the due credit that they're deserved. We should always look back at Roddy McDowall and say, just because he was under all that makeup didn't make him any less of an actor. He was quite good. So watch the Planet of the Apes. Also, Fright Night is a favorite of mine as well, and he's fantastic in that too. So, and then of course Akers, the steward in the Poseidon Adventure. So he was a great actor, and because it's Planet of the Apes, science fiction at times, I think we're in an age where science fiction is sort of kind of getting its due, but it deserves more. It's what brings box office in, and it could be good or bad science fiction, but I think that science fiction should be giving its credit, even more so we should. Thank God Avatar, that's a great example of getting best picture. Well, it got nominated, didn't get best picture, but it's good that people take it a little bit more seriously. Hell, that's what Comic-Con is all about. So, right?
Coming up in a couple of
That's
weeks.
coming up in a couple of weeks, sure.
Absolutely. Let's see. I know I've been avoiding it, but let's talk about the travesty that is Planet of the Apes, only because from a behind-the-scenes perspective, I don't know if many fans know it, but it deserves to be talked about. It's one of those situations where if a director has a vision, and there's things that block it from happening, then everybody just fails.
Yeah.
I think
It does.
there's a great article by an indie female director, how she was talking about the best movies that come out in Hollywood and the most successful ones have the most diversity, but people working to for the same common goal. And with Planet of the Apes 2001, that was not the case.
No, and it had so much going for it. I remember all the events leading up to the release of the movie and the marketing and hearing. Okay, so number one, you get Tim Burton is going to direct this. Tim Burton is definitely, I think we'd be in agreement. Everybody, Tim Burton is a man with vision, not just a vision, but vision. And he has proven that he can be a very good director. I mean, hell, he saved the Batman franchise way back when, and Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands and such. So bringing him on board, you knew that this movie was going to hopefully have a vision. And he, being a fan of the original Planet of the Apes, the computer-generated graphics weren't, albeit utilized, but they weren't what they are today. There was no motion capture. And he did want to go back to sort of kind of the old school, but he wanted to spruce it up a bit. So here I am, fan of Planet of the Apes. Tim Burton's going to do this. They're going to use makeup, and it's going to be him doing it. And again, he did a stellar job with the makeup. That it's going to, he's sort of an auteur. He's going to bring his style to this in one way, shape, or form. And, apparently there was a behind-the-scenes battle of the Planet of the Apes, so to speak, where Fox more or less ended up taking the movie from him. And, he's actually gone on record it wasn't necessarily the vision that he wanted to bring to screen. What we got was, when you have that much of a lead-up and you have such high expectations, you come to that, it had a really crappy ending. It didn't really make sense. things are just got jumbled.
Well,
the themes were there, but when you're trying to compare it to the Charlton Heston, it just didn't work.
But that's what I think. I would love to see kind of a Blade Runner version of this, because when that movie came out, atrocious.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the director's cut came out, and I mean, Blade Runner to this day is one of the most revered science fiction movies.
I reviewed it back when I saw it when it first came out. I was a huge fan of it, and inventing tech noir, so to speak. Yeah. I'm not sure that this the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes will ever get that opportunity.
I don't think so, because just the way
so maligned.
The way it just sounds, whereas with Blade Runner, the elements were there, they would just recut to such a degree that it just didn't end up working. Whereas with this, I think just some of it wasn't captured.
Yeah, I think.
And when you can't.
It's like you said, when you give into the diversity and you can't fully get made what you want to get made sometimes. Well, it shows sometimes on the screen. Yeah. It opened up, if I remember correctly, it opened up well. I mean, but Fox poured a ton of money. I believe it was Fox that did it. A ton of money into its marketing campaign. They cut great trailers. They had great promo materials. And I just remember seeing it open. I saw it opening night at the Westwood Village, and I just remember walking out going, "What did I just see? Like, what happened?" Yeah. And it's only until later in years that you find out that there were some issues going on, and it's sort of kind of sad because, again, we always talk about the collaborative process, and sometimes a studio gets in its own way. Yeah. And that seems to be that it could have been the case here, and it's too bad for Tim Burton and for the cast and crew, because he had a big cast and crew going for it too. You had Charlton Heston, isn't it? Paul Giamatti, Tim Roth, who Tim Roth put in a really great performance. Helena Bonham Carter, a Burton regular, was in it. Mark Wahlberg is making his bones. So
that's right. I forgot he was even in it.
Yeah, see, and you had a cast, you had promise, and that's sometimes a movie where there's so much promise when it doesn't deliver. Like, those are the movies that hurt the most. Yeah. And that Planet of the Apes is one that it just hurts, because it has all the elements. They just went awry. So, it's too bad. But Fox, you can't kick a good ape down. To their credit, they rework. And they said, hey, we can bring this back. It's been 10 years or so many years. Maybe people have forgotten about it. And again, now that the special effects and computer-generated graphics are up to this par, and once they've seen what Andy Serkis can do, it makes sense that we're going to go motion capture. We're going to make it more epic. And we're going to try to make a good story, sort of kind of throw back to the original series. And, but first and foremost, we'll try to make a good story. And the movie ended up being a hit. $54 million, I think. It did upon its opening weekend. It did all right. But critically, I think people went in going, okay, that was a little bit better than I thought. Yeah. And so it spawned a sequel for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
And now we're also getting a third.
Yeah.
We haven't even finished the opening weekend box office.
Oh, no.
We're getting a third.
Yeah, so it's good that they have faith, and good that they shepherded this one to a good, let's call it maturity, where, they've seen the follies of other people's ways, and said, we can make a good. We have the elements, and you have the elements in Planet of the Apes. I thought Rise was okay. I didn't fall into the camp where I gave it the highest praise that a lot of people were. I thought it was fine. This one I'm really looking forward to.
Dawn
of the Planet of the Apes I'm really looking forward to. I'm a fan of Matt Reeves. Mm-hmm. I think he's one of those young up-and-comers that knows how to tell a story. So I can't wait. And all in all, you talk about a franchise that never really, like I said, it never peaked as a, say, Star Trek It never had that
Well,
fandom.
that's what I'm saying. It just
never died.
But I think now it's finally coming to full fruition where people that have been waiting since, let's say, 1968 are finally, being given what they've always wanted. And you have a mass of people that are just so excited. And, you ask them, like, hey, have you seen Planet of the Apes? You mean Rise? They don't really know the rest of them. But now it's at a good time.
And something else that's really interesting about this series, it just dawned on me, who do you latch on to? Like, if you're going to make sequels, like we already mentioned, Roddy McDowall was actually the through line throughout. He'd been in all of them, but his character gets killed, murdered in Escape, at the end of Escape, and then he comes back in Conquest as well, his child, which is called Caesar, but he's the only actor, so to speak, that was the regular. Charlton Heston dies in the second one, and he's only in that one for 10 minutes. James Franciscus, he doesn't make it out of the second one either, because the planet blows up. We have Ricardo Montalban comes in. He's in, I believe, the end of Escape, and he's in the beginning of Conquest, but he ends up dying. And even when you look at this series,
the new one, you
had James Franco,
who people raved about.
Right.
I certainly did.
Same here. He's not in the sequel.
Except through archival footage.
Right.
But
isn't that interesting that, like, to perpetuate a franchise, you don't have a main character to follow through outside of the apes. So the focus is on Caesar.
It's gonna be well for now, but right. I mean, we can only skip. Again, for us, we know there was a midnight screening and all that. We didn't happen to go to it, so we're talking, pre-dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So it'll be interesting to see where the third one goes, given how the second one is going to end.
Yeah, and again, I'm looking forward to it.
If Caesar is the complete through line, that'll be interesting. But it'll be interesting if he's, not saying that anything's going to happen to him at the end of this one, but let's say they jump time even further.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's just very like, when you look back at a franchise, it would be like, how do you continue to do Die Hard without John McClane? And it's always been proven that when you change something, it just never works. It rarely ever works. You can change, Batman has had a history of changing the actors who play Batman, James Bond as well. But yeah, better or worse. But I can't think of a franchise where they've just completely taken out the character that we've grown to know and love.
But that's why it works in the sense, because just look at the marketing in general of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah,
apes on horses. And it just planet and apes. That's all you need, and that's why the title is so brilliant, because that's what gets people excited. It's not one particular ape or whatever. It's just this chaos.
Yeah, and you said apes on horses, which I'll admit I was giddy, because they showed apes on horses was a big thing in the movies. I mean, that's how they netted the humans. Charlton Heston, they were on horses in the television series and the animated series. Which, all this stuff we should talk about a little bit, but that poster, the main poster, I hope you agree, that's actually one of the more original posters I have seen, and visually striking to see the ape on the horse with the horse on its hind two legs, and he's holding the rifle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not your typical, floating head poster or something. That was a good poster. And I'm I'm getting apes on horses. They've always been there throughout the entire series, so that was really cool for me. Marketing on this movie has been good.
Yeah,
good stuff. That's the other thing too. We should talk about the television series. So these movies,
the animated or the regular.
Let's start with the regular. We'll start with the regular. I mean, again, we brought it up earlier. It was an hour long. It lasted one season.
What's a season back then? Was it the full 22?
It was a little bit more, if I'm correct. I thought it was more than I thought it was 25, 26.
25, yeah.
So it was an hour long. And again, when you look at the merchandising that was spawned off on that stuff, and then you can't keep a good ape down. You do 13 episodes of a Saturday morning cartoon, which, again, kids knew about Planet of the Apes coming up, and you know, it was part of that sci-fi growing up. For me, Planet of the Apes, like Star Trek a little bit more, but Planet of the Apes has always been around me. Just growing up, they've been in one way, shape, or form. So, and then they just became a pop culture thing. I can only name, like, so they get one season.
Well, also too, you know, in terms of the pop culture, right? Star Trek has its own things, but when you, just from the opening movie, when you have something as iconic as the Statue of Liberty, and I mean, how much more iconic do you need to get, especially, you know, obviously within America, to make it work?
No, absolutely.
And I think that was the brilliance of it.
Yeah, and again, today, even till today, people quote the original Planet of the Apes. How many
Whether
times
they know it or not, I don't know. But some do it without knowing.
Get your paws off me, you damn dirty ape! Or those maniacs, they blew it up. They blew it up. Those maniacs, you know. And there's just so much. Any geek movie, there's a great geek movie called Free Enterprise. Bunch of science fiction lovers, guys, and they go on a whole thing about Planet of the Apes. It has become so entrenched within that type of pop culture that it's rare that it's rare of a science fiction thing to have the longevity that Apes has had. Especially too when you talk about a television series that lasts one season on TV, yet there's still enough of a crowd that may have known about it. It sells on DVD. I'm not sure if it's out on Blu-ray, but they were able to sell, like, again, there were lunch boxes for this. There were dolls of the Planet of the Apes. Right now, like, the most recent thing that I can come up with is potentially Joss Whedon's Firefly, which was on for one season, but its fans are so rabid. Maybe not, you know, I'm not saying that Apes fans are as rabid as that, but when you talk about something that was on, and it didn't have the benefit of 6 movies or 5 movies prior, you know, there's a reason why there's a longevity to Planet of the Apes. I think that it connects with people. Today we make it look flashy. There's a little bit more action. Another thing I appreciated about the original movie is that it's not predicated on its action. It is really predicated on its drama. It is predicated on its story and dialogue. You have to listen to the dialogue, look at the visuals. Again, the monkey see, there's the human see, human do line. There's the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil vision in the original Planet of the Apes, which is very funny. You know, all these things.
But even Rise, you know, I mean, they really, ironically, they created a drama movie hidden behind action because I mean, Caesar and Franco,
right?
That was brilliant chemistry for a lot of the movie.
Yeah,
and then the action, at least the big stuff, didn't come until the very end.
Yeah, and I'm having a brain fart. Who was the gentleman that played Franco's dad? Do you remember? Because he too had some really great scenes with Caesar. So, you know, I mean, and you're right. I mean, Franco is probably one of his better performances. I agree with you. And it's good that you can take time to gestate a good story. And there's good science fiction out there.
John Lithgow.
John Lithgow, that's right. He played the dad. Very sympathetic. And, you know, and you're right. It built up the relationship. And there's good science fiction out there. We've had some already. I'm a big fan of Edge of Tomorrow. I think is a really good science fiction story that's predicated, has a lot of action. You know, Rise, like you said, sort of kind of throws back to the original where it's not about the action. It's not about the special effects. Special effects are used as a tool to help move the story. But you have to empathize with somebody here. And they did a good job with the relationship of man and nature. Yeah,
and then, just even from an animal perspective, so many animals suffer from separation anxiety. And for anyone who's had a pet, you can kind of know that because when they're separated, obviously, and then when finally Caesar just takes over, you know, all the cages.
It's a great scene.
Yeah, it's just you cheer for it.
Yeah,
because it's so well deserved, but because of that tension and just going, how much James Franco's character wanted to protect them, and he's jumping around in the neighborhood on the trees. They're so perfectly aligned, but it's like, hey, you can't do that, otherwise you're gonna get taken away, and he is taken away.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah,
all built.
and again, looking at it again, using science fiction as a looking glass. You know, there are tons of movies that we can call man versus nature. Jaws is a perfect example of that. Planet of the Apes sort of kind of turns those tables where it's nature versus man. It's man that is the monster. In the Planet of the Apes movies, it's man that's shown as being bigoted and racist, if you want, and just being cruel to other sentient beings, because that's what happens. I mean, they become sentient beings. And man, out of his own fear of losing his place in the world, just becomes cruel and uses violence to try to make its point. That's what I like about Planet of the Apes, is how it really turns those tables around. Yeah. So I call it nature versus man movie, because we're no good.
We don't always tend to be.
We don't always tend to be. So
especially now, more now.
Yeah,
it comes at a good time.
Yeah, and you know, we're good. We're all good here at Anatomy of a Movie and the crew. But you know, I think that's what makes a really good science fiction, when you can look at the humanistic aspects of it, and it brings up a good philosophy, or it makes you just look at humanity in a different light. It should be the struggle for humanity, and this Dawn seems to have it. And Jason Clarke, I believe that actor's name is. You know, if he's the character we're going to follow, that perhaps, you know, he seems to show the good side of humanity. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
And that's what I like, you know, in terms of that. For the most part, all of these movies, everyone's close to that. They have goodness within them. So it's not like, you know, that's what I like. No one's purely evil, but they've just kind of gotten away from that. And, you know, it's easy to forget. And it takes a lot of reminding to go to that, but there is that hope.
Yeah,
and, you know, and you just have to fight for that.
And sometimes people just suck. Like, you know, when you look at the Tom Felton character of Harry Potter Harry Potter fame, you know, he was just a dick. You know, like taunting the apes, but you know, we've gone through life where we've heard of stories of how people abuse animals. You know, I mean, there are animal shelters for a main reason, and it's because owners either abuse, abandon, or, you know, treat their pets. And you know, I think we can look at it from a PETA standpoint, or for, you know, cruelty to animals.
But as evil as he was, again, it was in many ways a learned behavior. And
True.
And you know, there's, you know, I think the movie's not beyond saying that he can still unlearn that behavior. But it's just problematic, because, you know, everyone goes to that, you know, the apes went to their first reaction. He went to their first reaction of, like, okay, violence and anger. Yeah. You know, instead, you know, what it's trying to do, what it's trying to show is that go beyond that, go to rationale. And but unfortunately, that is not the case with a lot of humanity. And
like you opened up, for good or for bad, for the good movies and the not so good movies, that theme has always been, that theme has been there, like, sort of kind of throughout. You know, another reason why I love the original too is the Taylor character is, you know, he does not have much faith in humanity to begin with. He's plunked into the situation. He's like, oh, holy shit, what happened? Where am I? How did we become, how are we not the apex people on this planet? And then he turns into the fighter of humanity. And then the classic Rod Serling, you know, ending is, it was humanity that brought them to that path. And his realization of that is so, it's so damaging to him. He's like, you maniacs. He goes, you did. He goes, oh, because he starts off the movie saying, you know, I hope there's somebody out there better than man, because we don't seem to be going in a good place and whatnot. And yeah, I just that's what, that ending is so iconic. And that was one of the only things that they've kept from the Rod Serling script, was that twist ending, which, you know, you wouldn't expect anything less from the gentleman. So I would like to see his vision, actually. And I think online you can get his actual script. I would have liked to have seen, like, his vision turned into a movie, you know.
What else? What other aspects do you want to discuss? I think on my end, I'm pretty much covered.
You know, I could talk about, well, you know, let's talk a little bit about Jerry Goldsmith's score for the original Planet of the Apes. Okay. Using, you know, it was so, in times it was brutal, and cacophony is it just captured what that being off balance, being human in that, and the music just captured that off balance, the savagery of the time. And of course it's Jerry Goldsmith, a famed composer, and this one, and Dawn, I can't wait, because one of my favorite composers of today, Michael Giacchino, is doing the score, and I'm really looking forward to see where he takes this. I'm a big soundtrack guy, so that's a big deal for me. And going back to the original Planet of the Apes and Jerry Goldsmith's score, that too, even though I don't believe he went back to score the subsequent movies, but that jarring music stayed through,
retained, yeah.
Even through the television series.
Let's see. It was Jerry Goldsmith for the first one, Leonard Rosenman for the second one. Jerry did return for the third with Escape.
I sit corrected, thank you.
Tom Scott did Conquest, and then Leonard Rosenman returned for Battle, and then for the remake you had Danny Elfman, of course. Patrick Doyle did Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. So and I think music does play I think it plays a key part in these movies, because it does set a tone of tables turned of what is going on here, and it brings you into it's great to make Earth an alien planet. And one that you may not recognize in it, and if the music can be offsetting in it, and it places a different tone, something that we're not used to, it plays an important part. And again, I'm very excited to hear what Michael Giacchino is going to do with this score. I think it's just one added level that makes me really want to look forward to. I'm looking forward more to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes than I was Rise. I don't know. I don't know what your feelings are, but
I'm excited. I'm excited for, obviously, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It's been a great summer thus far. I think but that's because Rise was that good a movie.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be, I was just expecting to see a fun movie. And it turned out better than I had expected, certainly different than I had expected.
Yeah.
But that's why Dawn everyone's anticipating, and there's already a third one on the way.
Yeah, and you had brought up, I agree. I think that, I know that the pundits and the writers and everything are going to talk about how box office has been so down this summer compared to past summers. All well and good. However, I still think that there has been a good batch of movies that we've seen. I've been entertained by, and they've been mostly science fiction movies. When you break it down, between Godzilla and X-Men and Edge of Tomorrow, and now I'll get to see Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I think we've had some entertaining movies out there. Again, I would rather focus on the quality of what we've been able to see and the fun that I've had going to the movies this summer. So, and hopefully Dawn will continue that streak for us. Yeah. So I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, it will certainly be fun. We'll have the full we'll have the full panel with us. They weren't as expert as we were.
I consider myself no expert, but it's fun talking about it. I love the genre.
By expert, let's define it as people who've seen the full gamut.
Okay.
Whereas
I don't appreciate it.
Whereas Sarah, Marissa, John's seen them, but he's away. But Sarah and Marissa, they've only seen kind of Rise of the Planet of the Apes and maybe Planet of the Apes, but they don't remember it.
Yeah.
They're babies.
They are. They're fetuses. I've said that before, but it's again talking about. They should see at least the original, or at least the first four. I think it helps too in seeing this reboot, because they were smart enough to go back. Those original movies were sort of the seed, because this one has a plague that wipes out things and makes the apes intelligent. They took from their good source material, which is smart. So
thank you guys for joining us for the Planet of the Apes special. Hope you guys had just as much fun as we did.
Yeah.
We like doing these sort of things for you. We'll continue to do more. We obviously started that tradition with the X-Men special.
Sure.
I don't know if we can do a Guardians of the Galaxy special, because there's nothing to
do there.
Maybe we'll do a Teenage Mutant Ninja special, though.
We could do. there's one really good movie. But we get, but yeah.
And we're set to have 3 bad ones.
Yeah, potentially.
But I'm hoping I'm extremely wrong about that. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We will be back for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Let us know what you think the 3rd title is going to be. Is it going to be Lunch of the Planet of the Apes?
As I said before this started, tea time.
Tea time.
High noon tea with the Planet of the Apes.
On behalf of Demetri, Panos, Phil Svitek, all of Anatomy of a Movie, where you can follow us on Movie Anatomy on Twitter, and go to anatomyofmovie.com for more dissections. We've had a blast. We'll see you here for the next dissection.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.